to call to order the August 5th, 2019 Cabarrus County Board of Commissioners work session. Welcome, everyone. First item on our agenda today is approval of the work session agenda, which you all have copies of before you. Do I hear a motion that we approve the agenda as presented? We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all in favor please say aye. All opposed no. That motion passes. And you see a number of changes that were included in that as well. And so we move now to discussion items and for action. And first up is appointments to boards and committees. I think all of that information has been included in your agenda and sent to you electronically earlier in the week. Does anybody have anything on there that they have a question about or an item that they would like to discuss? If not, those recommendations will go on our consent agenda for our regular meeting. Okay, so everybody's good with that? All right, next item is discussion on meeting schedule, and I think we have got a couple of conflicts on there. One of those being, so we have two commissioners that are attending the Aviation Academy at Charlotte Douglas Airport, and that would be the September work session. So what would be your pleasure on that? To move that work session to Tuesday? Because that's the one that's the day after Labor Day. So we would be moving it to Wednesday. Is that agreeable with everyone? Or would you prefer to move it a week forward or back?
I would prefer the Wednesday, because I already have a conflict on the following Monday.
Okay, all right. Okay, very good. We will proceed with that. And then the other one was our summit meetings, and I think, Lauren, you had made some inquiries about dates for the summit meetings.
Yeah.
And I don't know what kind of responses you got back.
It had started out on the 14th, of this month, August 14th. And Lynn had, Commissioner Shue had suggested that we move it because of the COG meetings.
Right.
However, we have tried a couple different dates and we're not certain that they'll all work out. We had September 18th down, but then that is a mental health advisory meeting. So now it's back to you guys. What works for you all?
Okay.
We don't have, we're pretty full for the next week. So
Okay.
one suggestion was to leave it on the 14th for this month and try and change it next summit
Right.
date. Whatever you guys want
Is that
to do.
agreeable with you?
What was the date again? We're talking about the summit, right?
Yes, sir. August 14th was the original date.
And I think the CCOG meeting, what conflict was why we were trying to reschedule.
Yeah, it is.
Are you okay with us proceeding ahead in August and then making adjustments next? Are we?
So we won't be here.
Well, yeah, there's a good chance that the county manager and I will be gone at that time as well. And so.
Well, if we could move it to the 21st, would that work with anybody?
Somebody
Yeah,
had,
I can't do it the 21st. I'm planned around the 14th, unfortunately.
Because I know we're going to the associational meeting on the 22nd, 23rd, and 24th.
okay, well, if we go ahead with the 14th, that means that I can't be there, county manager can't be there, and you can't be there. And if we go with the 21st, that means Commissioner Honeycutt can't be there. 28th of August,
I could do that.
how about you guys?
I can do the 28th.
I've got a doctor's appointment at 7 a.m., and I'm probably going to have some surgery that day, so I'm
Right.
probably not going to be presentable to attend a meeting when the doctor's reporting gets done with me.
And then, of course, that takes us then into September. We just moved our work session to September 4th, I think. And then the following week,
Does it have to stay on a Wednesday?
doesn't have to.
What
I
about
think we
August?
were doing that to avoid municipal council meetings,
Oh, got it,
I believe is
Okay.
correct.
got it.
Yeah, so September the 11th,
And I got CCOG that night.
and the 18th.
The
We have
18th's
Mental
open.
Health Advisory Board.
Well, we're almost
I'm
getting
gonna
to the
need mental
last, to the
health.
final quarter of the year, so do you wanna just hold off on this quarter and plan for the fourth quarter?
Only bad thing is, Mike, it's probably not gonna get better the rest of the year anyway, so
Well,
if we
you-
can hold
You've already
it.
got one that's gonna be scheduled for the fourth quarter.
Yeah,
But
Yeah,
that's
that's
still
the
gotta
third-
be changed or
the
he can't
13th.
come.
Yeah, but I mean, if we keep going farther out, then they're gonna be 2 or 3 weeks apart. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying, so-
Yeah, I propose that we take a summer vacation from summit meetings and then go back and start working on the fourth quarter now to avoid those conflicts, if that's agreeable with the rest of you.
only thing that I wouldn't want us to do is lose the momentum that we've got
Right.
going. And sometimes time tends to cause you to lose momentum, and that would be my only withdrawal on that,
Right.
would be to not lose that momentum of the collaboration that we've established over the last 3 or 4
Right.
years. But if you want to go ahead and do the 14th, just, let the other elected officials know that sometimes there's conflict with me and the Central Iowa Council of Government meetings, and that we just couldn't get it rescheduled again, and then just let y'all move on with the 14th.
Right, yeah, and the 14th is the
But
date
they
that
may-
county manager and I will be gone.
So are y'all definitely gone now?
We don't know.
No, that's kind of still up in the air, but it's looking that
Yeah.
way.
And the mayor as well, and
And that would be mayor and manager in Concord also. Yeah, and I
Okay.
think,
Fun
and so
times.
then the other alternative would be the 21st, which is what it was originally scheduled for, and that's when you have a CCOG meeting, the 21st.
No, I have a commitment. I don't think you have one on the.
You have a
21st.
commitment. Well, we could go ahead on the 21st without Commissioner Honeycutt.
Yeah.
I'm fine either way. If we want to take a summer break, and we know we have the fourth quarter, that's fine. If we want to do one, and unfortunately Commissioner Honeycutt's not there, then that's fine too. So either way, I'm okay with either one.
My vote would be to leave it as scheduled on the 21st. Or is that where it currently
I
is?
think it's currently the 14th.
Yeah, it's
Currently on the 14th, so we'd be changing it to the 21st.
Yeah.
Would somebody like to make that in the form of a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we reschedule our currently scheduled, I might get these dates wrong, summit meeting from September 14th to September 21st.
It's really August.
Yeah, I knew I'd get that wrong.
To change from August
From August
14th to,
August 21st.
right. And is there a second to that motion?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That motion passes, and we'll do the best we can with it. Okay, we've already got one scheduled for November, and it's currently scheduled for November the 13th, which is your CCOG meeting, right, Lynn?
It's always on that Wednesday that we schedule the
The
summit.
second Wednesday of the month.
Yeah.
And if we moved it to the third Wednesday of the month, that would make it the 20th. And I'm assuming Thanksgiving is the following week. That doesn't show on my, yeah, Thanksgiving's the 28th. So that would be changing it from November 13th to November 20th. Everybody good with that? Do we need a motion on that? Yeah. I would move that we changed the regularly scheduled fourth quarter summit meeting from November 13th to November 20th.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That motion passes. Anything else we need to change while we're on the topic, Lauren? That we got it covered? Okay. Very good. Okay, next item up for discussion is Dominion Energy easement on East First Street, and I think Jonathan is going to tell us about that.
These are two easements that are all part of one project. It's a gas line being run up East First Street to improve service towards downtown Kannapolis. Of course, with progress, we're also, in all the development going on down there, we're seeing a number of these infrastructure improvements. These cross parking lots across from the Kannapolis City School administrative offices and A.L. Brown, the same parking lots that you had provided money to resurface, and they have already started that project. But Dominion, or at least their representatives, indicated that these will be done with a directional boring so that they'll actually not disturb the surface, but they'll bore under that to install these lines where these easements are located. I've communicated all that to Will Crabtree and indicated to Dominion that Will Crabtree will need to sign off on this at the end before we really close this project out. So Kannapolis City Schools are aware of this. They're okay with the location. Since they were originally gave us the easement documents, they've gotten back to me on the amount they're offering for these easements, and they are based on a market price of the land. The smaller of the two easements are offering approximately $3,500. The larger, approximately $10,000. Our practice has been, when we get money on these school sites, or there's a payment of this sort, that it benefit those schools. So if the board wants to stay with that practice, what we would do is just add a budget amendment to this agenda item for you to approve at the same time, that would make sure that this money, which is a total of $13,355, would go to benefit Kannapolis City Schools.
Any questions for Jonathan? Okay.
Well, we will then add that to the actions you're taking on that item.
Excellent. Lauren, question for you and for the county attorney. We just took 2 votes, but we did not vote to suspend the rules. Are we okay on that, or do we need to go back and make that procedural correction?
On the meeting schedule, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
I don't think
You think we're okay? Good. Very good. Then we will move to item 3.4, Farmington Ridge Infrastructure Agreement. Jonathan Marshall will talk with us about that also.
And I'm going to ask Jim Merrifield to join me on this one. I will give you a brief update, and then Jim is going to update you on the progress with this particular development. As you will recall, you first heard this in March and April of last year. You actually held a public hearing at your April 2019 meeting on Farmington Ridge. There were some questions on the agreement from our bond counsel. Mr. Cook may want to weigh in on this, but I think we've addressed all those questions, both with our attorneys as well as consulting with some other attorneys on these agreements, and then the attorney for MPV. So we've been working through the final language of the agreement itself. Our tax office and David Thrift had a number of comments that they have now incorporated, particularly dealing with timing on the agreement. So those have all been incorporated into the documents, and so we think we've about finalized the draft of that and are ready to go with it. So it's back on your agenda at your regular meeting to consider for approval. And I'd asked Jim to come to update you on where he stands with the town of Harrisburg, which is also considering this agreement, as well as they are the land use control for the project.
Good. It's good to be back, and it's been a few months while the attorneys were working through things, but we are pleased that that's been resolved. And in the meantime, we've been making progress on a number of other fronts. We have filed with Harrisburg for an amendment to the PUD. You may have heard the discussion that the Cabarrus YMCA was going to go on our site. They subsequently determined that they couldn't go on our site because the Charlotte Y had jurisdiction. So we are revising our plan to move the fitness to a private facility up at the front and to convert what was the Y site to additional housing. So that's in the process with Harrisburg. We've also continued to make progress on the engineering plans and permitting for the site. Harrisburg Town Board, before we came to the County Commission, had already approved the TIF agreement. They'd had the public hearing and had the vote in favor of it. The document, they were waiting for signature by the county before they would sign it. So with these final adjustments that we've made to the agreement, we'll make those to the Harrisburg agreement, and they would be in a position to sign that after the county commission moves on it. We are hopeful that we'll be able to get started on actual construction on the project as soon as late September, early October, and are moving forward on that schedule. And the rest of the plans remain the same.
Very good. Thank you for the update. Any questions for Mr. Merrifield? Great.
Good,
All
thank
right.
you.
Thank you.
And Rich, thank you for all your help.
Okay, we move now to item 3.5, reappropriation of funds for ongoing project grants and commitments. We're happy to have Kristen Jones to talk with us about that.
Good evening. Every year I typically come before the board in August and September to present a list of requests from our county departments for any ongoing projects, grants, and commitments that are still ongoing. We're still ongoing in fiscal year 19, but we are requesting to transition to fiscal year 2020. So if you could scroll to the attachment. I don't want to go through these individually unless you would like for me to. The majority are tied to grants in a number of our departments, so I just was going to highlight the ones that had grant funding, and then if you saw any that you had specific questions about, feel free to ask. So the ones tied to grant funding are a cartology grant through the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality, a motorcycle safety grant through the Governor Highway Safety Program within our Sheriff's Department, SCAP funding within our Sheriff's Department, our Duke Energy Rebate Program, that is within our Community Development Department, SHIP programming, which SHIP stands for the Senior Health Insurance Information Program, and that's within DHS, a 4-H Cannon grant with Cooperative Extension, and a Senior Center Operations grant to continue further operations and programs there. So if you scroll to the last page there, you can see it's totaled by function area within each of our different departments. So for the general government, if approved, this list would transfer $504,881,000.07 in the general fund, and then $20,000 in the arena fund. And so you can see the total project-wise is $524,881.07.
Again, these are, excuse me, as Kristen said, these are tied to grants, and then there's also some projects where there's purchase orders that were issued. We just didn't get to the job, or the equipment or the materials were not able to get here before the end of the budget year. So this just moves them forward into this year so we can pay for them.
Okay, any questions for Kristen or Mike? Great, thank you. Okay, next we move to item 3.6, Re-Envisioning Cabarrus Community College contingency request for Advanced Technology Center. We are happy to have Dr. Carol Spalding and Jonathan Chamberlain with us, along with Susan Farrington.
The county Advanced Technology Center allocation is $16,586,941. And there's also a $430,543 set aside in the Capital Reserve Fund for project contingency, which is approximately about 3% of the original construction contract. The construction contract is $14,293,000. The funds for the Advanced Technology Center came from the May 2018 limited obligation bonds and our capital reserve funding. Requests for the use of contingency funds are presented to the Board of Commissioners for approval. Dr. Spalding and Mr. Chamberlain are here to present a request for contingency funding. So I'll turn it over to
Okay,
them.
thank you very much. Thank you for having us. We've been working hard with our Cabarrus staff to complete the Advanced Technology Center. When you look at it, if you've been over to Kannapolis, you can see that it looks fully complete, but it isn't. And so we are here to ask for, the county's budget has line item allocations. And so we have spent out our construction funds and need to use the contingency for conditions and change orders that are listed on we have a list. I don't know if you have this list or not.
The agenda package.
But this will help us finish phase one. It is for $179,449.14. So that is the purpose for our being here. Oh, I see it. Yeah, it's up there. That's our purpose for being here. We generally have worked with our board to, we already have worked with our board to have these change orders approved. And so we're here because it impacts the budget structure that you currently have. So I'm happy to answer any questions or have Jonathan do it. I'm happier if he answers them, actually.
So,
Any questions for Dr. Spalding?
just one real quick, Susan. The text says 179,000 and the
Okay, last page. Those
change
two- the
order law
first-
does not,
The first two columns, the estimated amount and the proposed
Okay,
amount,
so
those two
there's-
added together.
okay. Okay, I was looking
That
over in the
was-
far right, so, okay. Does everybody see that?
Jonathan, do you,
Your first two.
Ms. Chamberlain can
Okay.
chime in
Yeah,
on that.
yeah,
That
that's
was a little
correct.
confusing, but.
Okay.
The last four items have not yet been presented to our board, but we anticipate they'll go there. We work with State Construction Office, and State Construction Office actually negotiates the final number on those. So we have not yet taken those to our board for approval, but we anticipate taking them in the coming month.
Okay, any other questions? Encourage you, when you have the opportunity, to tour that facility. I'm sure there will be opportunities coming up.
We'll invite you
as-
yeah, absolutely, as our special guest.
Yeah, it is a beautiful facility, and I think it's going to be extremely valuable to Cabarrus County as a whole, especially the community college.
That's right. We see it as a community asset, absolutely.
Definitely so. Thank you very much.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate you being here.
Thank you. We appreciate your
Okay,
having
we
us.
move now to item 3.7 from Finance, write-off ambulance and library receivables for fiscal year 15. And Susan will again talk with us
Okay.
about that.
So each year, we present to the board 1 year's worth of receivables to write off of our general ledger. After 3 years, it would be very unlikely if the amounts are collected. So this year, we'll be writing off the receivables for fiscal year 2015. The EMS department and the library department have exhausted all means of collecting these old outstanding amounts. So the write-off amount for the EMS is $1,355,737, and the write-off amount for the library is $96,371. I did go back and look, and the previous year's write-offs for EMS were 1.1 last year, and 2 years ago it was $1,037,000. That does seem to be creeping up a little bit. However, our revenues are creeping up, and therefore our receivables and the amount that we write off will continue to increase too as our population increases. And I know that sounds like a lot of money, but we do use a third-party billing agency to go through for our EMS, and they send out notices. We do delinquent, what do you call them, tax. When you go into garnishments, we use garnishments, but there's also, you have to write off a certain amount for Medicaid. There's a contractual amount we have to write off each year. So, but this is after 3 years. Our auditors have determined that 3 years plus the current year is why we should keep on our receivables. So we're asking to write off the FY15. When previous years, we have not recorded a library receivable until last year. So this is the first year I'm bringing to you the write-off year for receivable for our library. Library fees, it's been determined that the total amount that we have outstanding is probably not going to be received after 3 years. So we're asking again to write off, and it was $96,371. Of course, if someone comes in, we're not going to tell them they do not owe the bill. We can still collect on those. We just don't need to show them on our financial statements. So that's this process to go through.
So are these overdue fees, lost books? I mean, is that all adds up to that amount of money?
Yes, and Emery's actually here if we need to ask a lot of questions, but to my understanding, it's for lost books, you know, when we had to charge them to put, for processing fees. After a certain dollar amount, you can't check out books.
That's
So-
what was
so-
my next question.
and
How much can you owe before you can't have services, or how does that work?
Accounts freeze at $5 right now, so you can owe more than $5, but once you're past that $5 threshold, it shuts down services unless we're working with you to have a payment plan.
It's a lot of $5.
Yes. Well, and that is a relatively new threshold. I think we changed that maybe 2 years ago. So it was a lot higher in previous years.
And sometimes, when I spoke with Meredith at the library, she said that, you know, a family, if you don't return 20 books, and each child can have so many books, and the parents, it really mounts up. Or if you lose some books.
Yeah, each card, you can have up to 50 items per card. So we have a lot of families that, you know, the adults have a library card, the children have a library card, and it can add up very fast. We have a lot of people who move and accidentally pack up their library books, and, you know, so there's all kinds of different scenarios, but generally, yes, all overdue and lost items.
I think that would be a testament to the amount of people in Cabarrus County using the library system, that we were able to amass that amount of past due funds.
It has been helpful too, now that we have the online payments, we're seeing a lot more money come in that way. So hopefully it won't be quite as high in consecutive years.
Good.
Emery, this amount here, do we write off the cost of the book or the value of the book?
I believe that we're doing the value of the book, because when we charge patrons, we're charging them for the actual, you know, manufacturer cost or the price of the book that they would buy at a bookstore.
Okay.
Because and generally, we get a small discount, but then we're paying for staff time, for processing materials, for all of that to go on top of it.
Yeah.
So
Would you say the majority of this is fees, or would it be books? Probably books?
it's honestly probably a good mix of both. The balance of accounts tends to go up higher with lost items as opposed to overdue fees. So generally speaking, we see the highest balances when people lose a lot of things or just don't bring them back, and they chalk them up to being lost. And then we see balances of a couple $100s on accounts.
Okay.
So that's generally how that happens.
Well, do we do any type of letters or calling or anything like that to help? I mean, that's, to me, I don't know how you guys feel, but that's a substantial amount.
Right.
$97,000 right at it, coming just from the library. You know, it seems like that's a considerable amount.
We send out 3 notifications every time something is, well, actually more than that. You get a notification that something's almost due, and then when it's overdue, you get a notification, then 2 more, and then once it goes into lost status, you get notifications. So yes, we send out lots of notifications. And again, it does block people's access once it, so if they're still coming into the library, they know, and they're generally paying it off. It's the people who come in one time, have a bunch of things that they never bring back, and that's how it accumulates so much. So there are options there in terms of there are companies that will actually do debt collection for libraries, but the Board of Trustees, we've discussed that in previous years, and they did not think that it was a good idea. So,
We will look into that.
yes.
Well, I would tend to agree with that, with what the Board of Trustees says. But when it gets this amount, I mean, even 50% is better than 0%.
Right.
And so,
And again,
You know.
the online payments are new, so we're really hoping that was going to go a long way into helping reconcile some of this.
well, hypothetically, well, I guess it's reality, when a person gets a letter and you tell them that they're $20 past due, is there a way that they can not have to come to the library to pay that, but they can do a debit or a credit card or something like that to pay those fees?
Exactly, those online payments.
So
So
they
that
can-
takes away that shame factor, that hopefully they're not embarrassed to come in and talk to us, because
Well,
we
I mean,
understand.
Well, I mean, just for the good of everybody else
Right.
that does right by the library, you know, I feel like there's people out there that want to do right, but for
Mm-hmm.
whatever reason, the tools that they need to make it right are not there. But if
Sure.
you say it is there, then that would eliminate that as an excuse. You know, you've got debit, you got credit card.
Right.
You know, or you can get a money order and send it in. You don't have to come in and say, I'm
Right.
sorry, you know, that type thing.
And we have those online payments. We also, if balances get up to a certain point and people have trouble paying it, we do have a payment plan procedure that we work
Sure.
with people on. We also have the option where if you lose an item or an item gets damaged, say your puppy eats it, if you can find it cheaper online, you're welcome to bring in a replacement copy
Sure.
as opposed to paying that full balance. So we definitely have created many ways to try to work through those as best we can.
Well, that's good, and I appreciate that, you know,
Sure.
it's just like in the tax office, you know, and like what we just wrote off from the EMS, you know, you're always gonna have those that for whatever reason, it slips their mind,
Mm-hmm.
for a nice way to put it, but it just goes unpaid.
Sure.
But I appreciate all your efforts, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
When that book is lost, how does it get replaced? How long does it take? Is it just part of your next budget cycle? So if it's lost in July, that book's gone till the next July and we have a new budget? I mean,
Oh.
how
we-
does that work?
Sure. We place orders basically every 2 weeks for books. When things are lost, we will order a new copy if it is something that people are still generally interested in. If our, statistics on that item are pretty high, people want to check it out, there's a demand for it, we'll order new copies. Sometimes things just go missing and we already have a few more copies in the system. We don't necessarily replace everything copy for copy, but if needed, we do replace it, and it just comes out of the current budget year.
Okay, so you've got a replacement budget, line
Sure.
item?
Mhm.
Okay, that's kind of a revolving.
Right.
If you lose a lot, you'll use it up, and sometimes you'll carry it over.
Yes.
Okay, additional questions for Emery or Susan? Great, thank you. Okay, next item, 3.8, reimbursement resolution for limited obligation bonds 2020, and Susan again.
Okay. Early in 2020 calendar year, we're expected to issue limited obligation bonds for land for a new middle school, high school, and a senior center library. On June 17th, you approved a reimbursement resolution for the land portion of this debt issuance. This afternoon, there are 2 additional projects that will need to have a reimbursement resolution approved at the regular meeting. But the 2 projects are the Governmental Center skylight and roof replacement, and this project is estimated to be around $2.1 million. And there's various preliminary expenditures related to the Cabarrus County Courthouse facility that we need to get started too, which is estimated to be about $6 million. Since the amounts are estimated, our bond attorney suggested we make the reimbursement resolution for tonight's agenda item $8,750,000. As in the past issuances, we will only borrow the amount of funds actually needed at the time of the debt issuance. So when we have those contracts in hand, we'll know exactly how much to borrow. But this puts a vehicle in place for us to be able to go ahead and spend the money and reimburse ourselves with bond proceeds once they are received early next year. So the reimbursement resolution is just a part of the process as we get towards issuing that debt in the early months of next year.
Okay, questions for Susan?
Susan, now this money will come, the 8.7 thereabouts, will come from the general fund. And is that part of, how much we hold, 15% per year? Is that what that's part of?
It's part of our fund balance that we can set aside. And usually, we don't have to tap into that. This is just if the timing does not work out right and we have to actually make a payment, let's just say that we get started and we need to break ground before that bond proceeds is received. We're not going to spend the 8.7, but we have to have that mechanism in place. So we will borrow money from our savings account, and then we'll put it back with the bond
Right,
proceeds.
and I understood that. I just wasn't sure if it came, because obviously the capital reserve fund, it'll be depleted with the
Right.
projects. So
Right.
it'd have to be the general fund.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, when we get the lobs, we put it back in.
Yes.
Yeah. Want this clarity.
No, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right, we will move to item 3.9, capital improvement plan funding for design of emergency medical services headquarters.
Okay. As part of the FY20 capital improvement plan, it was decided that the design of a new emergency medical EMS headquarters will be funded through unused Mount Pleasant Middle School contingency funds. So as you recall, each time we set up a project, just like we talked about the Advanced Technology Center in an earlier agenda item, we set aside funds in the capital reserve fund for contingencies. We've had to use this for things like unsuitable soils or just unforeseen things that crop up with the construction of a project. So for Mount Pleasant, just to give you a little history, Mount Pleasant Middle School was built for $33,374,308. We had a contingency in the capital reserve fund for $1,262,000. So I'm happy to announce that we only used $71,164 during the Mount Pleasant Middle School project, which was great. So that freed up some of the funds to be used on other one-time projects. So we were able to use that money, the additional money. We used $185,750 for unsuitable soils at West Cabarrus High School. We used $500,000 for the A.L. Brown paving project that we just spoke about. And then when we needed to get our architect for the courthouse ready, the contract, we were able to use $385,086 of that contingency money. So that's not having to use that contingency money paid off on some one-time projects that came up that we needed to go ahead and get some things started. So that leaves us with $120,000 in our Mount Pleasant Middle School contingency fund that's sitting over in the capital reserve. So this would, in the capital improvement plan we're doing for FY20, we realized that was left there, and this was a good use of that money to go towards the design of the emergency medical services headquarters. So what we're asking for is to go ahead and use that $120,000 for the design of this building. In your agenda packet, there was a sheet on the headquarters, and it shows where we're going to use the $120,000 in this FY20 year, and then we'll discuss during the FY21, the building of the building is estimated to be $3.6 million. That's requested for FY21. Of course, that will be vetted during our CIP process when all the projects are put together and see where we can afford to place that. But that's the plan that was presented by the EMS department for us to consider when we start talking in the FY20 CIP plan.
And as we look at those future CIP plans, we will try to design the building if it has to be built in phases, just simply because we can't afford the whole building at one time. So stay tuned on that. Hopefully we'll have enough funds to build the whole building, but if not, we'll be able to build it in phases. And
Refresh my memory where that building's going to be.
Cabarrus.
Yeah, so we actually have a meeting within the next 2 weeks to look at the first test fit site. So what we've been looking at is our former fairgrounds. That gives us access to 601 Cabarrus, and with the redevelopment of Rock Hill Church Road, a better access back to 29 South. We're also, their location requirements, we want to be somewhat near the hospital, just as we are now with the current headquarters. So we've been looking within a certain distance. So if the site doesn't work at the former fairgrounds, we'll continue to look at sites within that required distance of the hospital. As you recall, we of course have a number of set stations, but the model we're moving towards is those would really be kind of the ones we have now would be the set stations, and then from there we would do on demand. So if there was a need for a unit, for an additional unit in the Concord Mills area, it would come out of the headquarters site and then move there at peak times. So that's the other thing is it needs to be central to the county so that we can do that on demand type of deployment.
And if that site won't work, we've also been talking with the owners of the grounds at Concord as well for one of their out parcels as well.
I'm sure it goes without saying, obviously, the design, you'll know the land or know that they're going to both work together.
We will.
Yes.
So what
Yeah,
we've done is gone through, just like we do with any of these, really extensive programming to determine all their needs and space needs. So it's a very detailed programming study that's been completed. So now we're taking that programming and looking at different sites, but we will need to choose a site before we do any additional design work. So this is setting up the funding, but we need to complete the project that's underway first. And we can update you as we move through that.
Jonathan, was the site on Cabarrus Avenue where we just got for the asset infrastructure management? There's a lot there beside that that I think was part of that.
There is.
Was that
It's
considered?
really, it's not large enough for that and the other emergency warehouse needs we have.
Oh, I see.
So
Okay.
we think we can, that may be better served for the emergency warehouse that we've talked about constructing.
Right.
You know, we looked at a site behind EMS Station 2, but we feel like with our other assets all in one place, it'd be better to build that warehouse there.
Okay, any additional questions? Okay, we'll move to item 3.10, presentation of strategic plan for the library, and we welcome Emery back to the mic.
Hello again. Okay. I'm happy to finally be able to present our strategic plan to you. I know we've been talking about it for a little while, and I included the final document in your packets, but I have just a brief PowerPoint presentation to kind of take you through the highlights and talk you through the process a little bit. So, of course, we started this in really 2017, started trying to plan for this and applied for an LSTA grant to get a consultant to help us through the strategic planning process. And we found out that we were awarded that in June of last year. So it's been a full year and a half in the making, and we are pretty proud of what we came up with. So the framework that Dr. Bergen, our consultant, used to kind of walk us through the planning process is the Aspen Institute's Rising to the Challenge, Re-Envisioning Public Libraries. And the primary tenets of that are that public libraries are, critical parts of education in any community. They're the gateway to lifelong learning. And to be successful, public libraries need to align with community goals, provide access to content in all formats, and ensure long-term sustainability. So really, one of our first primary goals in this process was to get feedback from the community and to gather all of that. So our timeline on this, of course, we started expending the funds in FY19, and in August, we released surveys to the public to start gathering all of that great feedback, and we did a survey for the staff as well. So not only did we get direct feedback from the community, staff also had a chance to share their insights and their observations as well. So working through that, I presented the results of those surveys to you all in November of last year. That was that kind of deluge of information I gave you with all that data and statistics. And that was our community assessment. So working through that, we added to that information that we received in spring of this year, in February and March, as we did interviews. We did a lot of one-on-one interviews with community leaders, with patrons who are very avid library users, and we also held public forums in each of the service areas, including Midland, which did not have a library yet at the time, and also we did a West Cabarrus forum in that fire station number 9 to get that input as well. So in April, we got our first draft together, and it was finalized in May. We did not have a quorum in June or May for the Board of Trustees meeting, so they just approved it in July at their previous meeting, and now we're happy to present it to you. So throughout the process, we really narrowed down to 5 areas of focus within the library. And none of these are necessarily groundbreaking or new, but we just really wanted to kind of define what we were doing for each of these kind of service points. So of course, youth services, everyone thinks of, story times and having fun at the library, which of course we plan on continuing. But narrowing it down, we really want to make sure we focus on that early literacy component. And not just through reaching the children, especially birth to 5 years, which is that early literacy component, but also kind of being trainers and supporters of caregivers and educators in the community as well, which is that goal 1.3. And then, of course, we also want to continue to provide services to school-age children that allow them to kind of explore resources and information that they are personally interested in and will continue to spark curiosity. The next area of focus was teen services, which we, for as long as I've been here and for long before, we've had young adult sections and made sure we offered things for teens, but it was kind of a little haphazard. We're just kind of throwing things against the wall. So in the past few years, we've had teen advisory boards at most of the branches that could support them. And through that, that really helped us kind of narrow down what we wanted to focus on with teens. All the teens wanted their own kind of dedicated space in each library, which of course we can't do at the moment, but we're definitely going to try for that in some of our newer facilities once that is a possibility. Improve kind of digital presence, both in terms of reaching them on platforms that they engage in, and also giving them more access to technology in the libraries as well. Right now, we really just don't have a lot. We have the public computers that are there for everyone, but we don't have any digital or technology-related services that are specifically for teens. We also, want them to be able to collaborate and create things amongst themselves and use the library, whether they're in the library or those resources at home that we have access to as well. So narrowing down on how to reach those teens is a big area of focus. And of course, we have our adult services. So adults are our heaviest readers in Cabarrus County, and we want to continue to expand our collections and diversify those collections to reflect the changing needs that we've seen just through the population growth. And that includes, having more materials in foreign languages, on a wide variety of subjects, and also expanding that access to places beyond the library. Again, the digital formats and the ebooks that you guys have heard me talk about a lot. We also want to make sure that they have programs and those hands-on learning opportunities as well, along with the other age groups. We don't want to leave out the adults. So community engagement is our fourth area of focus. And this has to do a lot with marketing, figuring out how we can better reach people who, are new to the community. We've got so many people moving in, and also who just aren't aware of all the things that libraries offer. I've said it before, but there's not a week that goes by that I'm talking about library services and someone goes, oh, I can get ebooks through the library. So, of course, you guys hear me talk your heads off about it, but we want to make sure the public at large knows about it as well. We also want to keep building the partnerships and collaborations that we have throughout the years. And that's, of course, public libraries are primarily, more than anything, a place to connect people with information. So we have so many wonderful agencies and organizations in Cabarrus County that can provide that information. We just want to connect people to that. And we also want to make sure that we're reaching those underserved residents or kind of the non-traditional users, again, who may not think of a library as a place for them, but we want to make sure they understand that they are. And then finally, operations. We want to make sure, with all of these goals in mind, we have staff and facilities that can support that. You are all very familiar with the facilities, issues that we face, just in terms of some of our libraries being far too small, and then we need several more to kind of meet the demand now of our growing population. But also staffing. So right now, according to data from the State Library of North Carolina, we're about 30% understaffed in terms of comparisons with other library systems our size. And to be fair, we don't have anywhere to put more people at the moment. So, cart before the horse kind of thing. But that's something we want to focus on as well. And when we do have staff, making sure that they're well-trained and can be those good resources to community members. And then our plan for implementation. So a lot of this is, we've been thinking about it for a year and a half. So we've already kind of, set some things in motion. And once this is finally approved at your regular meeting, we can really dig into some things. There's a lot of kind of forms and procedures that we've talked about that will help closely align our new services with the strategic plan, making sure that we're identifying the goals and activities. We also, which is something that the Board of Trustees brought up, we do not have any specific dates tied to any of the activities in our strategic plan. And we did that for a few reasons, one of which is that, a lot of the things like facilities and staffing, we don't really have direct control over from inside the library. And we know that those are being worked on, so we, have to wait on that. But also, we want to make sure we're not limiting ourselves to dates and pushing things forward if it's not the right time. So to get around that, the Board of Trustees requested that we do an annual report that is directly related to the activities in the strategic plan, so they know kind of where we're at year by year, what we've accomplished, what we're working on, and what we're still waiting to set in motion. Are there any questions?
Questions for Emery? You did a good job presenting.
Thank you.
Okay. We've talked about this quite a bit, and serving as a representative to the Library Board of Trustees, they have talked about it a lot, so I've heard about it there as well. And I think the doctor that was in charge of the survey had some very complimentary things to say about Cabarrus County and our libraries and its employees and the services that they offer. So I think it was a very good experience for all concerned.
I agree, yes.
Yes. Okay, we move now to item 3.11, and that's, once again, the library trustee bylaws update.
Yes. So our Board of Trustees, we had not really looked at the bylaws for about 10 years, so we decided it was time just to glance through and make sure that those were up to date. And we did that at their July meeting. So this has already been approved by them and will, of course, go into effect upon your approval. We did not change much. We just tweaked some of the wording for the most part. One of which was in that first statement under Article 2. We added in the wording, all members must be residents of Cabarrus County and shall be chosen from the area of which they are a resident. That wasn't really expressly laid out before, even though we had been operating under that. And those areas that are represented on the board follow. We also added in a statement about the Board of Trustees being the one to nominate a candidate for a vacancy on the board. And that is to get them just kind of more involved, more invested in that process. And they did a great job going through the applications that we had for the Midland vacancy. And you'll see a nomination for that Midland position in your packets. And then the final thing that they updated was under that Article 4, the board powers and duties. And that was just to amend some wording in terms of, ultimately the Board of Commissioners is the governing body of the library. And so there was some conflicting language in there. So we just changed that, like that first one, to assist and recommend programs and policies for the library rather than to authorize. And also number 5, to serve as an authority in banning appeals rather than that final authority. So just simple updates.
Okay, questions for Emery? And the trustees spent quite a bit of time going through these and deliberating, so I think they feel comfortable with them. Okay, we thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, 3.12. We are happy to have Sergeant Rankin from the Sheriff's Office to talk about the Governor's Highway Safety Program Local Governmental Resolution. That's a mouthful. And he was good enough to bring Sheriff Van Shaw along with him.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, thank you for allowing us to come before you today. We come with a request. We had an opportunity to apply for a grant, which Lieutenant Rankin completed the grant through the Governor's Highway Safety Commission. We started back in 2017 tracking traffic complaints, be it speeding, stop sign violations, accidents, whatever the case may be, through a portal that is shared within the agency to make sure we're efficiently utilizing our time as to the investigation of those complaints. So we track the time that we actually spend in an area, if we're given a specific area of the county, the citations that are issued, those types of things, in an effort to be responsive to those complaints. In January of this year, we had an opportunity to apply for another grant with Governor Highway Safety Commission. This grant would allow us the opportunity to create a traffic safety and education unit. This unit would be primarily assigned to enforce traffic laws, conduct traffic crash investigations, which we do a number of, as well as have an education piece to address some of the issues that we have here in Cabarrus County. And when I speak of it, I'm talking about the unincorporated areas outside of Kannapolis and Concord, of course. But to address those issues through various programs that these individuals would be responsible for putting on, as well as the day-to-day enforcement of the laws, to give us an opportunity to address those. I'm going to let Lieutenant Rankin talk about some of the high points of the goals and objectives and some of the criteria for that grant, the data we used in order to be selected. We have been selected by the Governor's Crime Commission for that grant, for the funding of the grant. It would require an action on your part, and that's why we're here today.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us here. This grant process, as the sheriff said, started back in January using the numbers and data that we've collected through a number of years. And what we found out as I was going through the collection of it is there's a number of areas that we rank within the top 25% in the state of, I'll give you an example. We're ranked number 11 for young drivers that are involved in a crash out of 100 counties. So we're number 11. And you want to be a higher number. Definitely don't want to be the lower number. We're 15th in the number of serious injury crashes in the state. And our overall fatality ranking is 23rd in the state, and speed-related fatalities were 15th in the state. So we, going through this and talking with the sheriff, looking over our numbers, applied for the grant. We were approved after some back and forth of some different things that they wanted us to address. But one of the that we wanted to focus on, especially we saw with being 11th with the young drivers. A lot of times we feel like with the young drivers, and this is where this unit will come into play, a lot of times it's just education is what they're lacking as far as the rules of the road, the hazards of distracted driving. Those are the things that we need to focus on. NHTSA says that the number one way to reduce traffic crashes, to reduce impaired driving is through high visibility enforcement and a heavy public awareness. And that's where this unit can come in and dedicate to that. They can spend the time in the schools with the driver's education programs, with public service announcements, those type of things that we can address these and move higher up in the good direction for our ranking here in Cabarrus County and make our streets safe for the citizens and the folks visiting our county.
This grant would allow for the funding of two positions, two full-time positions with a match. It would also allow for the funding of the two vehicles that would be assigned to the individuals, as well as the associated equipment, radar, LiDAR, in-car camera, those types of equipment that come standard on a patrol vehicle. It would be a dedicated unit. They would not only do traffic enforcement and education, they would also do crash investigation and crash reconstruction, which we already have individuals trained in crash reconstruction. And surprisingly, we do a number of crash investigations in the county. A lot of times that is due to the highway patrol being extremely busy in our heavily populated county. Quite frankly, when there is a property damage accident and the patrol can't get to a citizen for an hour and a half, 2 hours for that wreck, we will go ahead and do the crash investigation for them, get them on their way in a matter of 20 minutes versus them sitting on the roadside. Plus, we're also there with them. We're clearing that traffic hazard, and we feel like overall it's a good utilization of our resources to keep the motoring public safe. So the grant would allow for that. It would also allow, as Lieutenant Rankin said, for a number of educational programs, things that we aren't currently able to do as often as we would like. This would be click it and ticket, drunk driving, checkpoints, identification of crash zones within the county, where we're having our highest rate of crashes in the county, and then an enforcement presence within that. The other unique thing about this grant, because we're working in conjunction with the Governor's Highway Safety Commission, we would also be given quarterly meetings with DOT engineers. So we could bring our data to their table to be able to hopefully advocate for more safety type of design that could be placed at these intersections. And I know I get a lot of questions a lot of times, why is there not a stop sign or a four-way stop somewhere that I have no control over? As I know y'all are often posed with that same question as it relates to highway construction and traffic safety. What this grant requires is a first year 15% match of personnel and the cost, which totals $33,635 for the first year. It is a 3-year grant. The second year, the match goes up to 30%. That does not include the equipment. The equipment is taken care of in the first year. So the second year is employee cost only, and we're allowed to go back and adjust. Obviously, in the grant presentation, you're given an average salary of an officer as from a reimbursement standpoint. In the following years, you get to actually calculate the two people that are in those positions and use their real salary for the 30% match, and then the third year is a 50% match. So it's a 3-year program. I think there's an opportunity for a renewal of the 4th year as well. This just covers the initial 3-year program. It would require, and what we're requesting today, because it is a federal fund, we cannot supplant and use any other position. They have to be 2 new positions. So I would be coming before you. I realize this is outside of the budget process. When we started this process, we weren't sure of their timetable, and it was not included in the budget process this past time. Of course, it would be, as are the other grants in the future, but I do come before you requesting a suspension of the rules and a potential vote on this particular resolution.
As the sheriff said, this was not through the budget. This opportunity came on after the budget process was through. We thought we were going to be able to use some existing positions, and after further clarification, they were not. So therefore, the request is, or the requirement of the match is there. Again, since the budget has already been approved and in place, we were looking for options of funding, and the best option at this point that we've identified would be to come from your contingency for this first year, and then it would roll into the regular operating fund after that. And that is a part of your, as you can see on your budget amendment here, you have a large contingency, but a lot of that is based on school numbers, and we're waiting on to see what those actual numbers are. But this would be part of your unassigned fund or board contingency that we, if you so choose to approve the grant and the program to enhance the program, that this is where we would recommend that the funds come from.
Okay, any questions for Lieutenant Rankin or Sheriff Shaw?
No questions, just mostly just comments. First off, I appreciate you guys being here, and Lieutenant for applying for the grant, and then, of course, receiving it. With our community surveys, safety, public safety is always, if not the #1 issue, it's there at the top, #1, #2. And anything that we can do to make it better is, I just appreciate all that you do, to help us with our public safety. And Sheriff, you both explained it very good to me. I understand it. What's going to be our out of the contingency the first year? Do you have numbers on that, Mike?
It's $33,635.
I think you might have said that. But it's 30% the second year and 50% the third year.
Yes, of personnel costs. The
Right.
equipment costs are taken care of. We're only having to pay 15% of 2 vehicles.
Right.
Which I think that number is about 106,000.
Yes.
So about 16,000 of that 33 is, we're getting 2 vehicles for $16,000.
Oh, it's the deal.
And,
No doubt.
so yeah, it's an opportunity. We did look, as Mike said, at other things that we could possibly do, but it is federal money, and we received guidance from the commission that it had to be something, it had to be new positions and could not supplant other existing positions.
Well, I'm real happy that we could do this, and, Mr. Chairman, if we're going to suspend the rules, I'll make that motion that we suspend the rules so we can vote on this, and then if there's any discussion, whatever, they have it.
Okay, we have a motion to suspend the rules. Do I hear a second? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. And would now entertain a motion to accept the grant award, approve the resolution and related budget amendments for the Governor's Highway Safety Program Local Governmental Resolution Program. Does that get it?
Absolutely.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I do have a question.
Yes,
before
sir.
we move on. In the statistical analysis, it said we were, what, 11th in young drivers? How do they define young? Is it 20 and under, 19 and under, 16 and? My most recent birthday, to me, young's now 40 and under, but that's probably not where they are.
Under 20.
Under 20, okay.
Glad you clarified that. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
all very
Appreciate
much.
it.
Okay, next item is approval of the regular meeting agenda, and you all have copies of that before you. I do not think we have discussed anything tonight that requires a change. Number 7, changing of the dates. Would call on Lauren for a ruling on that. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the regular meeting agenda as presented. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. I'm sorry to report that I know you'll all be disappointed that we do not have need of a closed session tonight. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. We have a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting. All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. We stand adjourned. Thank you very much.